This is the first step to setting up an 8.5 by 11 full bleed item. So remember, full bleed means that you need to print on something that is larger than the final trim size. So the way I set these up, I like to start with the final trim size and kind of work out from there. So go to File, choose New, and set up for your trim size. In this case, it's 8.5 by 11 inches, 300 pixels per inch, CMYK color, 8-bit with a white background, and click OK. Go to View and make sure that your rulers are turned on and your snap option is turned on. Then you're going to add guidelines, which are non-printing lines, but they will help you, they will guide you, which is why they're called guidelines. So click on a ruler and drag out a guideline and put it along the edge of the document. So on each edge, we're going to put a guideline. That's our trim line. So this is the final trim size that's indicated there. Now we need to add the bleed. A typical standard bleed size is 1/8 of an inch. So we need to add 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Go to Image, choose Canvas Size, and this is easiest if you just click Relative and make sure the point is in the center and the canvas extension color is whatever the rest of it already is. And just enter in the amount that you need to add to the overall width. So we're adding 1/8 of an inch on each side, so we're adding altogether 1/4 inch on both sides. So 0.25 and 0.25, and then click OK. So that's added our extra around the edges. Now what we need to do is bring in some more guidelines, because that will show where our bleed is. The last set of guidelines that we need are a safe area set. So safe area means that's where text will stay. You don't go out of the safe area with any sort of text, because then it gets too close to the trim line. And depending on what you're working on, the size may differ. A good size for a 8.5 by 11 is about 1/4 inch. So if I zoom into this top left corner and take a look, my 0 point right now, where both of the zeros are, is this top very left corner. And I want to add 1/4 inch, I want to add a guide that is 1/4 inch away from this line. Now, instead of having to try and figure out, okay, well, this is 1/8 of an inch, so 1/4 inch is this way and that way and whatever, the easiest thing for me to do is to move my 0 point to a new location. And you can move that by clicking on this little gray box up where your rulers meet and dragging, which will create a crosshairs, and drag it down to that trim corner, and now the zeros match up with that line, and it's easier to tell where the quarter line is. So if I look at this, there's 1 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1/4 inch. So now I'm going to drag out a guideline and put it at the 1/4 inch mark on all of these. And then I'm going to hold spacebar and pan over to my other corner. It has one on the top already that we've already placed. So I'm going to do my 0 point again to this trim corner and click and drag out another 1/4 inch line. And scrolling down to the bottom here, do the same thing. Set your 0 point to the trim corner and drag out a guideline to 1/4 inch, and that should put guidelines on all 4 sizes. Now let me tell you this, if you were depending on what you would print, so if you're printing with a big commercial printer and doing lots and lots of copies, I would highly recommend calling them and asking what file format that they needed, and also if they needed you to set it up with tick marks. Often if it's something like an 8.5 by 11, all they'll want you to do is build it with a bleed, and then they'll set the tick marks when they put it on their template. So it's a good thing to find out. For the class assignment, we need to build our tick marks because we'll be the ones trimming it. So here's how we do that. First, we need to make the paper the full size that we need it. So go to Image, Canvas Size, uncheck Relative, and type in 11 wide and 17 tall, and click OK. So now we have our full canvas size. Then we need to add our tick marks. Now if you'll remember, this line, this middle line, is our trim, so that's where we need to put our tick marks. A good tool for adding tick marks is the pencil tool because it's very crisp and clear. If you click on your brush and hold down, you'll be able to find it. There it is, the pencil tool. Right click and set it to be 2 pixels wide. And it looks like I actually need to pick a different brush tip because it's on an artistic brush tip. So I'm going to come back up and pick a hard-edged one, set it to 2 pixels wide, and make black my foreground color by either hitting DX or clicking on this little default button and creating a new layer, name it tick marks. Then what you're going to do is come in to your guideline, and these are the ones that we'll put the tick marks on, and we don't want to come into the bleed area because this is where they can fill it with color. In fact, so let's grab our pencil tool, and if you click right on that line and hold shift and drag up, it will create a beautiful crisp line. And these lines don't need to be very long, they only need to be about 1/4 inch long, and they shouldn't really go down into the bleed. They should stop at the bleeder a little earlier. Whoops, hit Command Z if you do anything funky like that. And I'm holding spacebar to pan over, and I'm going to do the same over here. And spacebar to pan down. And do the same down here. And if you get lost which line's what, just kind of count from the inside out. Safe, trim, bleed. And I could be a little more tidy about these and make sure that they're all the same size, but for this project it really doesn't matter because you're going to be the one trimming it. Okay, now to check to make sure I made all of my tick marks correct, I need to hide my guidelines. I can do that at any time by hitting Command H, which will hide all the extras. I can also do it by Command semicolon, and when you hit that multiple times, it's a toggle, it comes on and off. So those all look great. So I have my tick marks set up. It's a really good idea to lock that layer by clicking the little lock symbol in the layers panel so that they don't go anywhere. To keep all of your design contained within the bleed area without stuff getting all messy outside, a really good idea is when you start creating, first make a new layer that is filled with whatever your background color is. And if you're doing letterhead, that will actually be not all of it. So I'm going to just fake real quick kind of a footer and a header. Okay, footer and a header. And if I had other graphics that were coming in, and this is why I had a different brush, I had a leaf brush. Made a new layer, and it's still a pencil. I probably should switch over to my brush. There we go. Let's try that. I wasn't quite sure why that wasn't working. Alright. Leaves, leaf, whatever your graphic is. Now we don't want stuff hanging outside of the bleed area, especially because it might cover up our trim tick marks. So to avoid that happening, a good idea is to take whatever layers you have and put them into a folder. You can do that by coming up to the options and saying new group from layers, which will create a group, and then grab your rectangle marquee selection and select that whole outside area, so that bleed line from the very outside. You're on this folder, and then click the add layer mask. So now if any new layers you create go into that folder, they'll stay nice and tidy and they won't overlap your tick marks. So the next thing would be how to save this file so that it prints. You want to save your copy, which would be a layered.psd file. That's not the copy you should take to the printer. The printer does not want all of your layers, and they do not want a really big file. In fact, if it's really big, it might not even open up for them or go through their system. So we need to make a flattened version of this. The best way to do that, and one that's most common, is go to File, choose Save As, and you want to set the format to Photoshop PDF and choose wherever it's going. I'm going to name mine Letterhead. If you're one of my students, check on the site for what yours needs to be named. And then click Save. A little message will come up. Click OK. The preset you need to choose is High Quality Print. And then turn off the preserve Photoshop editing capabilities, because you don't really want them editing your editing yours. You want to do the edits yourself. You can leave Optimize for Fast Web Preview turned on and click Save PDF. And that will generate the PDF that you're going to take to press or to get printed. Once you get your object printed, let me tell you how you're going to trim. First off, you need to get either an X-Acto knife or something like a utility box cutter knife that has those nifty little break-off blades. I like getting kind of the smaller one. It's a little easier to handle for a job like this. You would put the blade, fresh, nice, sharp new blade, down right on that top tick mark. And then you would get your ruler, and I'm going to just create a ruler real quick. And lay it up against the blade that you've already got touching that tick mark, and then line it up to this one down here. Now when you cut, it's important when trimming that you don't trim from the very top of this outside to the very other outside, because if you do that, this whole side will fall off and you'll lose your trim marks. So when you trim, just cut from here down to the other trim mark, and then move your ruler and do the same for those other 4 sides, and you should get this beautifully nice even cut. If you're trimming a lot of things and you notice that the paper starts catching, it means you need to refresh your blade. So either replace the blade, or if you're using a break off the extra. A safe way to dispose of those blades that are used is either use a blade disposal, which some of these things do come with, or wrap the blade in a piece of masking tape before you throw it away. And let's just go check our PDF. It's always a good idea to open your PDF and make sure everything looks good before taking it to the printer. So here's my desktop, which you can't really see all of it because it's a huge desktop. Here's our PDF. Now if I double click on it, a PDF will open in Adobe Acrobat, and it all looks good. I can zoom out by hitting Command 0 to see the whole thing. There's my tick lines, everything looks good. So the only thing I can think of you might want to add to this is maybe your name and an email up here at the top before you save this off as a PDF. That way if the printing place needs to contact you, they will definitely have your information. You should probably leave your information with them anyway. So that's how you would set up for really any 8.5 by 11 object that you needed to print with full bleed and trim down. So you'd set it up on a larger piece of paper and then make sure that you have the tick marks all in the right place.